Good afternoon, everyone, or should I say Guten Tag? I looked up on Google Translate how to say that. Welcome to our talk on Angular 2.0 Dart, moving a large-scale application over to Angular. Who am I? I am Faisal Abid. During the day, I work at an AI and machine learning company called Zoom AI. We're an automated virtual assistant for your enterprise, and we're hopefully going to be doing some Dart soon. And during the nights, I run this crazy app called VenChat. We're top 100 grossing applications on Android. It's powered by a Dart server, so that's where I do most of my Dart development.
Yeah, and my name is Kevin Birch. I'm currently the CTO and co-founder of a company called the Overflow based in Toronto. And you might be curious about my social handle. It has nothing to do with what you found on your chair, but I am in fact a drummer as well. So if the CTO gig doesn't work out and you need a drummer, please give me a shout. It's good to have a fallback plan, right? So just a quick background, over 20 plus years in technology. I stopped counting when it got to the plus. Working through healthcare enterprise solutions, moved into mobile in 2005, started a company in Toronto called Silver Birch that was a mobile game developer. We had the fortune to be sort of at the crest of the wave. We took that company public on a small exchange in Toronto, but sort of a lot of experience with these different technologies over the years coming and going, and recently working with different startup ventures, full stack stuff that I like to do. So that's where I met Faisal, working on a lot of these kind of things. We both have similar mindset in terms of new opportunities. First introduced to Dart, I guess, last summer. And again, just based on the experience I've had, I just really fell in love with it right away. Absolutely love the technology. And of course, we're going to be talking about some use of that today and some projects that, well, one project in particular that I'm working on. So it's the Overflow. And this talk is going to be a little bit more along the lines of a success story, a case study, using the types of things we've been talking about at this summit so far. And so I'll give you a little bit of an outline of what the Overflow actually is, just so you understand what kind of requirements we have, what the technology is going to be behind it all. We are a streaming music service with a twist. We are specifically focused on Christian music. So you might know of it as gospel, you might know it as inspirational music. But think of it as Spotify with a filtered and curated subset of the catalog. So, are we competing with Spotify? We tend to think not. We have a massive target audience, 2.2 billion, according to 2012 numbers. Even a small percentage, finite percentage of that makes a subscription model interesting. But really that segment is very particular, very cautious about how they shop for content online. The browsing experience, and specifically how that relates to family, wanting their family to be in more of a family-friendly environment. So that was really the vision for the Overflow, and a little bit of some eye candy here on the mobile app side. This is, one of the other issues that we're addressing on some of the other platforms is, things like Christian and Bollywood and whatever tend to get lumped into a single genre, right? And I don't think that's not really appropriate. That's frustrating for these end users because Christian's more of a segment, obviously, of users. And we're dealing, well, as you can see, we have genres within Christian music. People want to be able to search for pop and gospel and rock and different types of genres within that. So we think we've already seen, since launch, that this is a very well-accepted thought that we had. And the record labels as well, unbelievably supportive of this because it allows them to surface some back catalog things, artists, albums that don't see the light of day necessarily on other services. So that was the intention behind this, and we did launch in the US a number of months ago, and response has been fantastic. We are seeing accelerated growth curve, and planning to launch now to other territories heading into 2017. So really we're talking today about initial technology choices that we made, why we did that, and of course now why we've ultimately made the decision to move to Dart and Angular 2 to better support the growth and our future requirements. So just a quick overview of the old tech. Very small team to start. This is self-funded, 3 people. I was the only developer on the team, so built the entire stack. The choices that we made were just, of course, we've grown from there, but initially with the proof of concepts and the baby steps, it was myself. Initially, the choices were simply based on, what is going to be able to get us out there quickly, prototyping, quick iterations. And certainly that doesn't rule out Dart or other technologies that were available at the time, but it was also a lot based on, we don't want to spend a lot of time learning new things, working with what we knew. And so we chose, for our technology, we chose PHP for our web tools and Node for our API. So our web tools were purely internal facing. So we didn't have a lot of internal grievance, sort of back and forth about whether to use it or not. It was just their internal facing administration tools that we needed to manage our system, to manage our catalog. So just as a frame of reference in terms of the scope of this thing, there are 3 million albums in our master catalog and 28 million songs that have to be streamed and downloaded and constantly managed as new content comes out from other record labels and things. So the administration tools are significant, but again, they were internally facing, so PHP was chosen for that. Node was new to me at the time. I would normally have used Java backends traditionally with servlets, Tomcat, J2E stacks, but again, for the sake of speed, Node seemed absolutely perfect. I think we had talked about that at the time. And so just, in terms of our usage, it was a lightweight solution, getting things out there quickly, quick iterations. So that's sort of where we started in terms of our tech. Why was it a problem? I mean, it met our requirements at the time, but I mean, we were showing those signs of success. It was going in the direction that we were hoping it would go. And so it was really time to, of course, move away from proof of concept, baby steps, and time to expand and reevaluate our technology platform. We needed a web client. So we had only launched originally with the apps. It was a mobile-only play at first with Android and iOS native apps. We had a very simple architecture initially, database, API service layer, and these native apps talking through that API service layer. But it was time to expand. And with a web client, we needed multiple developers, multiple teams. We need to obviously, in order to be even remotely competitive out there, we need machine learning. We need automated curation of our playlists and so on and so forth. So it was now time to get past the proof of concept stage, figure out what was the best platform for us to build our solution on. So I am a fan of PHP, but I think in certain situations it really works well as a quick solution. But ultimately, I think probably a lot of us would agree maybe not the best solution for a long-term, large-scale platform like this, needing multiple developers, multiple teams working on different parts of the system, really separating presentation, business logic, and so on and so forth. Node, I would say, less of a problem, certainly great and could have kept us going. But as we went through the evaluation process of other technologies available, there was clearly big advantages in coming up with some type of platform that could be used across all layers on the full stack. And so as we began to really carefully evaluate where we should go from here, my good friend Faisal, we had lots of long discussions about this, and of course, he had some recommendations for me.
Yeah, and so when Kevin came to me and said, all right, Overflow is growing, and we need to scale, but Node and PHP and all these technologies aren't really cutting it for me. I looked at his code base and I said, crazy. So like Watson and Sherlock, we went on searching, and back then I just recently became a GDE, but before that, past year or so, I was doing a lot of Dart development. So I got a real sense of the power of Dart because previously I ran another chat app which was all Node.js, and I understood the struggles that you face once you hit big time with Node. So I went to Kevin and I said, all right, here's what Dart gives you, right? Dart gives you object-oriented programming, and Kevin was like, awesome. I think he was playing his drums. And then I started showing much more cooler features like Observatory. And I said, look what you can do. If you're writing a web app, you can pull up Observatory, and you can actually do lots of profiling and all this crazy stuff there. And Kevin was blown away. And then the magic, I think, was when I started showing async and await. And I said, all right, so here's what you would do in Node normally. And I looked at his code, and I said, okay, so you load up a track, you download music, all that stuff. Look at that crazy callback, right? And it was 4 levels of callback hell. And I said, okay, let me show you how you do that in Dart. And it was just 4 lines, right? Await, and we're good. And so once that started happening, I went through the other features like streams, like cascade operators. And once we got there, it was just perfect, right? This was a perfect fit for Overflow and their scale. And so what we needed was, there was a web app currently, but we needed to really rewrite that web app into something much more scalable in Dart, obviously. So we started to explore technologies. Back then, there was Dart HTML, there was Polymer, and there was Angular 2.0 beta, alpha, whatever it was. So I discovered Angular, and technically I discovered AngularDart because I was an Angular JS developer back in the day. Did lots of scope apply everywhere. But so I started investigating. Kevin had worked with Angular previously before too. One thing that I really, really enjoyed about Angular was this idea of components, how everything is a component. And during my day, or I used to do a lot of mobile development. So writing web apps like mobile apps is like coming home for me. So what I liked a lot about Angular was this component lifecycle that they had. And you can see that it starts off with like ng on changes, on init, on click, and then you got a bunch of other stuff like after content init. So something that we often hook into is ng after view init. So if there's a progress loader or something like that showing, we would, after the content's init and after it's viewed, great. Hide the loader, load the data, do whatever, right? So this felt a lot like on resume on Android. Any Android developers here? Yes, right? On resume or on iOS is like view did show, whatever that side of the world does. So then what I also liked was the idea of dependency injection. Dependency injection makes large-scale development a lot easier. Writing unit tests and stuff, I hate doing when I'm writing small apps, but when you're starting to write large-scale apps, unit testing is very important. And so dependency injection makes everything a lot easier, so we can just inject API service, have a mock one later, do a unit test. And then with the new stuff that we saw early today, I think that's going to make a lot of things easy. So with all that, I said to Kevin, all right, let's just build this in Angular 2, hope for the best, and that they're going to go final soon, and let's just launch this, right? And
yeah, so it was an easy sell once I had a good look at the components, and based on previous experience, we had a web beta already in place, so we weren't in any big rush. We had an opportunity to experiment a little bit with this technology, but we decided to do it. I think it was the best decision ever, and especially hearing all the things that are going on at this conference and sort of the future of all these technologies we're using. Very, very excited about this. Again, we're keeping it a little bit high level here just to kind of give you a sense. I mean, there's a lot of technical discussions going on about what's happening under the covers, but I'll just sort of relate some visuals to what is happening in the Dart and the Angular 2 world. So this is a first iteration of the web client. And yeah, you see, it's fully expanded. It's a little busy because we wanted to show some extra components for you. But on the right side, we have a search panel that comes in and out. That's a persistent search. You can always come back to that and hit another search result at any time. It's a single-page application, so we have some of these kind of flexible options here. I mean, the player as well down below is a component. The navigation, of course, the header. And then the central area is our content area. And even within that, of course, lots of subcomponents, album widgets, playlist widgets. And you know, so this is what the user sees, but of course on the back end or on the code side of things, what the developers see would look something like this. Simplifying some things just to give you a sense of it, but this is the tag structure underneath our high-level app component. So you can see some familiar tags, or at least ones that would relate to the previous slide, header, navigation. The interesting thing about our content area would be that this is like the router outlet, meaning any navigation we do throughout the site through the navigation panel or other links is targeting this particular area. So that's the big, content area I showed you on the previous slide. There's some other UI things here that I didn't show you, cues and such, but I mean, you understand the point. And I mean, obviously the awesome thing here is that each tag has its own corresponding self-contained code component, HTML, styles, business logic, and subcomponents as well. Lots of things as we've already been through a fair bit over today. And then just to give you a little sample of what the code would look like and some of the things Faisal was talking about, we have an API service class that we've labeled as injectable. Anything within the system that needs to, of course, bring data in from the back end, we inject this component into it. And then underneath we see a sample of what this homepage component looks like. Again, that's not the entire wrapper. That would be the app component, but the homepage component is the content area. Like we have a playlist component and album component to view those details. So again, it's defining a selector. That's the router outlet I mentioned. The content is being pushed to that particular selector. We have an HTML file that defines the template, the layout, the framework of the page. And then directives, bringing in other components like, I have removed a few things here, but the key ones would be our router link component and our loader component, which allow us to navigate across the app. And the loader component, as Faisal mentioned, is just a little UI to indicate loading as things are coming in from the back end and as the page is rendering. And then the API service is also referenced as an injectable object. So this particular class is conforming to part of the one of the lifecycle methods after view init. Simply means that we need to implement this ng after view init method, which is called after the view is fully loaded and initialized, which, in this scaled down example is just showing that we're removing the loader component, getting rid of that loader UI and displaying the content of the page in all its glory. So everything was really, really super smooth, and fast. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about productivity. There's been a lot of talk about clean code. For us, it was a very, very positive experience just doing this as an experiment. And we started with beta 12, so a few months back. So, I mean, we've had a little bit of refactoring to do as things have changed there. But again, everything just works, and I'm just super happy that it is 100% Dart. Except, of course, for the cases where we do use JavaScript interop, which I won't get into detail. It's been talked about brilliantly by Jacob earlier. But we do use JavaScript interop. There are things like analytics libraries, customer support libraries, even some audio players that we tie into, audio player widgets that we tie into from time to time. But JavaScript interop allows us to do that. And this is just a stock example. This isn't our code, but you know, we've seen that already. So, I mean, it's obviously important to talk about, how did this help? So after the web client was really a success in our minds, we thought, okay, we're going to do this everywhere. And so we immediately went and converted the API layer to Dart. It was very quick and painless. That is in production now. It's been in production for quite a while, actually. And we're converting the admin tools, not as much of a rush, but we're converting that as well, just because they're internal. We're just doing that sort of slowly as time allows. But, I mean, the big thing for us really is, the lack of context switching now between different technologies. We're able to, we don't have to keep track of different technologies moving at different paces. That was discussed earlier. Yes. And that is absolutely true. And our development teams can more easily operate between layers as we get a consistent platform across API, bin tools, and of course, looking to the future for mobile. Very excited about tomorrow's talks about Flutter and such. And the other big jump in productivity for us was being able to really extract a common Dart library. We pulled out all our model code. We pulled out, of course, API access stuff that some of those components would need, utility methods into a shared Dart library that's now able to be used across all of these different layers in our system. It's really, really great. And I do personally believe that the move to Dart away from JavaScript and PHP has just forced a cleaner and more structured code and architecture. Also has been discussed. I was watching Lars and Casper's Intro to Dart video from 2012 on the plane over here. And that's touched on brilliantly in terms of why Dart was created and its sort of comparisons with JavaScript. So talk about it.
So we get asked often whenever we tell our story to other developers is, well, why didn't you use Angular 2 JavaScript or Angular 2 TypeScript, right? And really, it's not about Angular. It's really about the language that's powering Angular. For me personally, Dart is putting Angular on steroids, right? Angular, as it is a great, great framework. It was great in 1.5, and that's why I got this far. But Dart really pumps up the productivity. And when you're using something, at least what I've personally found, my opinion, when you use something like JavaScript, Angular JavaScript with a bunch of power and all these crazy plugins that you have there, all these technologies are moving at different rates. It's really hard to keep track of that. What I like about using Dart, Angular Dart, is just one solid technology that I can just develop on. When it updates, it's great for me. But so it comes back to Dart being great, Angular is great, but it comes back to Dart being amazing. So the language is stable, obviously. Observatory, for example, as I was talking before, this stuff is great when you're developing, right? Like when you're actually developing a web application, when I see this, I look at this all the time because this is amazing. And then you have really nice stuff like streams, right? Using all this when you're writing your Angular app is crazy. This is just mind-blowing to me, coming from a mobile background, even like doing Cold Fusion back in the day. And then using stuff like, here's another thing that I personally like about Dart, which is what makes Angular great, is if you're trying to use something like async in Node or on the web, you have to use the async package and you have to chain all this up. Dart is batteries included, right? We've heard this over and over again. It comes with a great async framework, so I can just do future.wait, pass in my methods, and it just waits for them. And then the other thing is this idea of being object-oriented. I love it. That's because it makes stuff like building singletons really, really easy, right? When you're writing web applications in general, having this flexibility, having this power, makes it just a cohesive experience where I don't have to worry about like, oh, can I do this on the web? No, I can just do it with Dart. And then lastly, just other simple features that I think make Angular great because of Dart is stuff like named parameters, right? Tons of time, I don't want to method overload a bunch of stuff. I can just do name parameters, gets the job done. So overall, this is why I feel Angular 2 Dart is great. It's because of Dart. It's because Dart is there. And then what's nice about Dart is, like Kevin was mentioning, once we have this code base, we can share it across the stack. So as you saw early in the screenshots, Kevin showed some mobile apps. The idea eventually is once we investigate more, Flutter more, is to move all this over to Flutter, right? We save less development time, and then all this code that we're using on Angular, something like a singleton class, we can use that on Flutter, we can use that on the web, right? As long as platform independent, whatever. So that's one of the productivity gains that you get by using Dart, and having Angular is essentially putting it on steroids.
Yeah, so hopefully that was interesting as sort of a real-world case study and a lot of things, external, I guess, real-world case study in terms of the things we're talking about. We are extremely happy with our decision to move to Dart. Absolutely committed to using it, inside of the Overflow and myself too, other projects that might come up in the future. We've been able to move things forward very quickly. We've seen big bumps in productivity. And we're firing on all cylinders. We just have had zero downtime on the APIs. The web's been solid, and it's only first release. There's a lot more to do there. But looking very much forward to next steps and the things we're taking away from this conference. I just want to go home and start coding. But thank you very much for your time. If there's anything that any questions or any comments you have, we'd love to meet you and hear about those later. So thank you.